The polished marble floor reflected 1,000 points of white light as a coffee cup shattered across the executive corridor at 9:17 p.m., sending dark liquid skidding toward a pair of expensive Italian shoes. A young analyst cursed under his breath. 2 vice presidents kept walking without looking down. And 20 feet away, pushing a gray custodial cart beneath the cold hum of fluorescent lighting, Daniel Mercer quietly changed direction before anyone asked him to. The smell of roasted coffee mixed with industrial cleaning solution. The building never truly slept. 42 floors of glass, steel, and ambition rose above the city like a monument to success. By day, it belonged to executives, investors, and celebrities. By night, it belonged to people like Daniel, the invisible workers who erased the evidence of everyone else's importance. No one noticed him kneeling beside the spill. No one noticed the precision with which he worked. No one noticed the faded silver wedding band still resting on his finger. And no one could have guessed why a man like him had willingly disappeared into a janitor's uniform. That question had followed him for 7 years. Only Daniel knew the answer. Even then, he rarely allowed himself to think about it. He finished cleaning the floor, stood carefully, and adjusted the sleeve of his navy work shirt. A small gesture. A private ritual. A reminder that dignity did not require an audience. Outside the glass walls, rain streaked across the skyline. Inside, the air conditioning carried a constant chill through the corridors. Daniel checked his watch. 9:24 p.m. Emma would still be awake. He stepped into a service elevator and pulled out his phone. A text message waited. "Dad, don't forget tomorrow is presentation day." His tired face softened immediately. "Wouldn't miss it for the world, kiddo." 3 dots appeared. Then another message. "You say that every time." Daniel smiled. "Because it's always true." The reply arrived seconds later. "Love you?" His chest tightened in the familiar way it always did. "Love you too. Get some sleep." The elevator doors opened. The smile faded. Work resumed. The 20th floor housed executive administration. It was a place of muted carpets, expensive artwork, and doors that rarely opened for people wearing uniforms. Daniel pushed his cart through the hallway. Most employees ignored him. A few nodded politely. He preferred it that way. Invisibility was peaceful. Peace had become valuable. As he emptied recycling bins, fragments of conversation drifted through partially opened office doors. Stock projections. Investor concerns. Quarterly performance targets. The language felt strangely familiar. Far more familiar than it should have. Daniel continued working. Yet beneath the calm surface of his expression, old instincts remained alive. Instincts that had once made him extraordinarily valuable. Instincts he had spent years trying to bury. Near midnight, unusual activity disrupted the routine rhythm of the building. Security personnel appeared on multiple floors. Senior executives hurried through hallways carrying tablets and folders. Phones rang constantly. The atmosphere changed. Tension spread through the headquarters like electricity. Daniel noticed immediately. People under pressure moved differently. They always had. By 12:15 a.m., rumors had begun circulating among staff. A major investor meeting. Emergency revisions. Unexpected financial concerns. The company's billionaire founder herself had returned to headquarters. Victoria Hale. The name alone changed behavior. Employees straightened their posture when she appeared. Executives spoke more carefully. Managers became nervous. Victoria Hale had built Hale Dynamics into one of the most valuable technology companies in the world. Magazines called her visionary. Television hosts called her brilliant. Employees called her terrifying. Daniel had seen her only twice. Both times from a distance. That suited him perfectly. Unfortunately, the night had other plans. At 1:03 a.m., Daniel arrived outside Conference Room Atlas. The largest boardroom in the building. Bright lights spilled beneath the doors. Voices echoed inside. Executives. Investors. Board members. Millions of dollars depended on whatever was happening in that room. Daniel intended to empty the recycling station nearby and leave. Nothing more. Then he saw the screen. One of the boardroom walls was transparent glass. A financial presentation filled the enormous display. Rows of figures. Growth projections. Revenue forecasts. Operating margins. Daniel glanced at them casually. Then stopped. His hand froze on the recycling bin. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. He looked again. A specific sequence of numbers immediately caught his attention. Not because it was obvious. Because it wasn't. The discrepancy hid itself beneath otherwise flawless reporting. A tiny inconsistency. Almost invisible. Yet once noticed, impossible to ignore. Daniel felt a sensation he had not experienced in years. The sharp mental click of recognition. His pulse increased. He stepped closer. Carefully. Quietly. Inside the boardroom, executives continued discussing strategy. No one noticed him. Daniel examined the presentation again. The numbers appeared correct individually. Together, however, they told a different story. A story nobody else seemed to see. Or perhaps a story somebody desperately hoped nobody would see. His stomach tightened. That wasn't a forecasting error. It couldn't be. The variance was mathematically impossible. Unless. The boardroom doors suddenly opened. Executives streamed out for a short break. Daniel stepped back immediately. But not quickly enough. A junior analyst noticed him. "What are you doing?" Heads turned. Several executives looked over. Daniel remained calm. "I think there's a problem with the presentation." The analyst laughed. "A problem?" Daniel nodded. "One of the financial assumptions doesn't match the supporting numbers." The comment spread through the group instantly. Several executives exchanged amused looks. One smirked openly. Then a voice emerged from behind them. Cold. Sharp. Commanding. "What's going on?" The crowd parted. Victoria Hale appeared. Her charcoal gray suit looked flawless despite the late hour. Her expression carried the confidence of someone accustomed to absolute authority. The analyst gestured toward Daniel. "The janitor says our financial models are wrong." A few people chuckled. Victoria's eyes moved toward Daniel. Briefly. Dismissively. "Is that true?" Daniel met her gaze. "There's a discrepancy." Silence lingered. Then came laughter. Not from everyone. But enough. Victoria folded her arms. "And how exactly would you know that?" Daniel remained composed. "I noticed a variance in the projections." More laughter. Louder this time. Victoria shook her head. The expression on her face wasn't anger. It was worse. Contempt. "You noticed a variance?" "Yes." She stepped closer. The corridor became quiet. Employees watched eagerly. Public humiliation always attracted attention. "You clean floors." Daniel said nothing. "You replace trash bags." More silence. "You are standing outside a room containing some of the most experienced financial professionals in the country." The crowd watched. Nobody intervened. Nobody looked away. Victoria's voice hardened. "And somehow you've decided you're smarter than all of them." Daniel answered calmly. "No. I'm saying the numbers deserve another look." The response irritated her immediately. Because he wasn't defensive. Because he wasn't embarrassed. Because he wasn't behaving like someone beneath her. Victoria pointed toward the elevators. "Get him out of my sight!" The words struck the corridor like a slap. Security moved immediately. Several employees lowered their eyes. Others watched openly. Daniel felt the familiar sting of humiliation. Not because she insulted him. Because Emma had once asked why people judged others so quickly. He had told her they shouldn't. Yet here it was again. The same lesson. The same arrogance. The same mistake. A security guard approached. Daniel simply nodded. "No problem." He picked up his cart, adjusted his sleeve, and walked away. Behind him, conversations resumed. Laughter returned. The meeting continued. The world moved on. But as Daniel entered the service elevator, one thought refused to leave him. The numbers on that screen had not been mistaken. They had been altered. And somewhere inside Hale Dynamics, someone was counting on nobody noticing. The stale smell of burnt coffee lingered in the nearly empty break room at 2:41 a.m. as rain tapped softly against the dark glass windows overlooking the city. Most of Hale Dynamics had settled back into silence after the investor meeting. Vacuum cleaners hummed in distant hallways. Elevators moved occasionally between executive floors. The building seemed calm again. But Daniel Mercer knew better. Some silences hid storms. He sat alone at a small table near the vending machines, holding a paper cup that had long since gone cold. The fluorescent lights overhead cast pale reflections across the scratched plastic surface. His custodial cart stood nearby. Anyone passing through would have seen only a tired janitor taking a short break. No one would have guessed what was happening inside his mind. The figures from the presentation replayed endlessly behind his eyes. Numbers. Ratios. Forecasts. Tiny inconsistencies. Patterns. Daniel had spent years teaching himself not to think this way anymore. Tonight, those old habits had awakened. And they refused to go back to sleep. He reached into his pocket and unfolded a scrap of paper. During the brief moment outside the boardroom, he had memorized several key figures from the presentation and written them down afterward. The numbers looked harmless. Until they were examined together. Daniel stared at them. Then he saw it. Again. The same impossible variance. A projected revenue stream had been adjusted upward. A liability had been shifted. The changes were subtle. Elegant even. Whoever made them understood exactly how financial oversight worked. That realization disturbed him more than the discrepancy itself. This wasn't amateur manipulation. It was deliberate. Professional. Careful. His phone vibrated. A photograph appeared from Emma. A poster board covered with handwritten notes. Tomorrow's school presentation. A bright smile accompanied the picture. Daniel smiled despite himself. For a moment the tension eased. Then another message appeared. Don't stay up all night working. He laughed quietly. If only she knew. I'll be home soon. Promise. The warmth faded after the screen went dark. Reality returned. Someone inside Hale Dynamics was hiding something. And Daniel could no longer pretend he hadn't seen it. By sunrise, the rain had stopped. Pale morning light spilled across the glass exterior of headquarters as executives arrived for another day of meetings. Daniel remained invisible. Just as he always had. But invisibility had advantages. People ignored janitors. They talked freely around them. Forgot they existed. Failed to notice when they listened. Throughout the morning, Daniel moved between floors collecting waste bins and cleaning conference rooms. At the same time, he observed. Names. Departments. Conversations. Tension. The company felt different. Anxiety lingered beneath every interaction. Employees whispered. Managers looked distracted. Something larger was happening. The discrepancy wasn't the only problem. By midday, Daniel found himself cleaning an executive strategy room that had been vacated moments earlier. A presentation remained open on a conference monitor. Most people would have ignored it. Daniel paused. Just for a second. The screen displayed updated projections. Different numbers. Different assumptions. Yet the same hidden pattern. His heartbeat quickened. That confirmed it. The manipulation existed across multiple reports. Not an accident. A system. A design. Someone had built it intentionally. Footsteps echoed behind him. Daniel stepped away immediately. A woman entered carrying a stack of folders. Mid-30s. Sharp eyes. Professional demeanor. She stopped when she noticed him. Then looked at the screen. Then back at him. Did you understand any of that? Her tone carried mild amusement. Daniel considered lying. Instead, he answered honestly. Enough. The woman raised an eyebrow. Enough for what? Daniel nodded toward the display. The growth assumptions don't support the debt structure. Her expression changed instantly. Not laughter. Not mockery. Surprise. What did you say? Daniel repeated himself. This time more specifically. The woman stared. The room became strangely still. You work in facilities. That's correct. And you understood that presentation? Daniel hesitated. Years of caution urged him to stay silent. Years of experience pushed the other direction. Finally, he spoke. There's a mismatch between reported exposure and projected performance. The woman slowly placed her folders on the table. Who are you? The question hung in the air. Daniel looked away. I clean the building. No. She shook her head. That's what you do. Not who you are. For several seconds neither spoke. Then voices approached from outside. Senior executives entered. The woman turned toward them. Everyone stop for a second. The room quieted. Confused faces turned her way. She pointed at Daniel. This man just identified a reporting inconsistency most people here missed. A few executives laughed. Others rolled their eyes. One recognized him immediately. The janitor from last night. More chuckles followed. Daniel remained calm. The woman didn't. Maybe you should listen before laughing. Silence settled. Reluctantly. An executive folded his arms. Fine. Explain it. Daniel looked around the room. Expensive suits. Senior leadership. People who would never normally hear a word from him. His instinct was to leave. Instead, he walked toward the monitor. The room watched. Skeptical. Amused. Dismissive. Daniel picked up a marker. Then began. His explanation lasted less than 3 minutes. No dramatic speech. No grandstanding. Just facts. Precise. Methodical. Clear. He connected figures across multiple reports. Highlighted inconsistencies. Explained why certain assumptions could not coexist mathematically. Showed exactly where the projections broke down. And what the discrepancy implied. When he finished, he set the marker down. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The room went silent. Truly silent. Not the awkward silence of uncertainty. The heavy silence of realization. Several executives stared at the screen. One began checking numbers on a tablet. Another opened financial reports. Expressions changed. Confidence disappeared. Confusion took its place. Then concern. The woman who had first spoken to Daniel finally broke the silence. He's right. A senior vice president looked pale. Another executive whispered a curse. Someone else sat down slowly. The silence grew heavier. Because they all understood the same thing. The janitor had not guessed. He had known. Words spread quickly. Far more quickly than Daniel expected. Within hours, discussions erupted across multiple departments. Questions surfaced. Reports were re-examined. Meetings multiplied. People wanted answers. And at the center of it all stood a man who officially cleaned hallways for a living. Unfortunately, Victoria Hale heard about it too. By late afternoon, she summoned several executives into her office. The atmosphere changed immediately. Fear returned. Daniel wasn't present. But stories traveled. Raised voices. Anger. Accusations. Damage control. Victoria refused to believe a custodian had discovered something her leadership team missed. Her pride would not allow it. The simplest explanation was unacceptable. So she chose another one. Daniel must be a problem. And problems could be eliminated. That evening, as Daniel prepared to leave for Emma's school presentation, an envelope waited inside his locker. No name. No return address. Nothing except a single sheet of paper. He unfolded it carefully. A printed spreadsheet appeared. More numbers. More discrepancies. Far worse than the first ones. Someone inside the company had sent it. Someone who wanted help. Or someone setting a trap. At the bottom, a short handwritten message appeared. 3 words. Look higher. Daniel stared at the page. His pulse slowed. Not from fear. From certainty. Because he finally understood what he was looking at. The inconsistencies weren't protecting a department. They weren't protecting a manager. They weren't even protecting a division. They led toward the very top of Hale Dynamics. Toward the people nobody questioned. Toward the people nobody challenged. And perhaps toward the billionaire who had ordered him removed. For the first time in years, Daniel felt the old weight settling onto his shoulders again. The weight of truth. The weight that had once destroyed his career. The weight he had sworn never to carry again. Yet now it stood before him. Waiting. And somewhere above him, hidden behind executive offices and locked boardroom doors, someone powerful was beginning to realize that the janitor they had mocked was becoming a very dangerous problem. A cold wind swept through the downtown streets before sunrise, carrying the scent of wet concrete and distant traffic as Daniel Mercer stood outside Hale Dynamics headquarters, staring up at the glass tower that seemed to disappear into low gray clouds. The building looked unchanged. Elegant. Powerful. Untouchable. Yet everything inside it had begun to shift. And Daniel could feel it. The envelope remained folded inside his jacket pocket. The anonymous spreadsheet. The hidden discrepancies. The handwritten warning. Look higher. 3 simple words. 3 words that had dragged him toward a life he had spent 7 years trying to escape. For a long moment he remained motionless on the sidewalk. Then he entered the building. The revolving doors whispered shut behind him. The day began. By 8 o'clock, tension hung over headquarters like invisible smoke. Employees lowered their voices when discussing financial reports. Managers avoided eye contact. Meetings appeared suddenly on calendars. Executives disappeared behind closed doors. Something was wrong. Everyone knew it. Nobody understood how serious it truly was. Daniel pushed his custodial cart across the executive floor. Outwardly, nothing had changed. Inwardly, everything had. He noticed details automatically. The nervous tapping of fingers. The forced smiles. The hurried phone calls. Fear always revealed itself through small behaviors. And fear was spreading. Near the central conference wing, the woman who had defended him the previous day intercepted him. Her name, he had learned, was Sarah Whitaker. Senior Risk Compliance Director. Sharp-minded. Careful. One of the few people in the company who seemed more interested in truth than politics. She glanced around before speaking. We need to talk. Daniel nodded. A few minutes later they sat alone in an unused meeting room. Muted sunlight filtered through frosted glass panels. The air smelled faintly of printer toner and stale coffee. Sarah placed a folder on the table. I reviewed everything again. Daniel waited. She exhaled slowly. You were right. He wasn't surprised. That wasn't the part that mattered. What did you find? Sarah opened the folder. Her face tightened. The discrepancies aren't isolated. Daniel remained silent. She continued. They've been happening for almost 3 years. The room suddenly felt colder. 3 years. Not weeks. Not months. Years. Daniel looked down at the documents. Manipulated projections. Hidden liabilities. Reclassified losses. Carefully structured reporting adjustments. Nothing obvious. Nothing dramatic. Just enough distortion to influence investors while maintaining plausible deniability. Whoever designed it understood exactly where the legal boundaries existed. And exactly how to stand just inside them. Sarah leaned forward. What worries me is who approved these reports. Daniel already knew the answer. Or suspected it. Either of them said the name aloud. They didn't need to. That afternoon, Daniel attended Emma's school presentation. The gymnasium smelled faintly of varnished wood and construction paper. Parents sat in folding chairs. Children nervously rehearsed speeches. For a while, the corporate crisis disappeared. For a while, none of it mattered. Emma stood on a small stage beneath bright lights. Her voice trembled slightly at first, then strengthened. Daniel watched from the third row. Pride filled his chest. Not because she was perfect. Because she was brave. Afterward she ran toward him. "Did you really come?" Daniel laughed. "What kind of question is that?" "The kind where dads sometimes get busy." He knelt beside her. "No matter how busy life gets, I show up." Emma smiled. Then studied his face. Children notice things adults missed. "Something's wrong." Daniel hesitated. "Just work." She folded her arms. "You always say that when it's something bigger." For a moment he considered explaining, then decided against it. She deserved childhood, not corporate warfare. "Everything will be okay." The words sounded less convincing than he intended. Emma noticed. But she didn't press. Instead, she hugged him tightly. The simple gesture nearly broke him. Because deep down, he knew what was coming. Truth had consequences. It always had. The attack arrived 2 days later. Swift. Precise. Public. Daniel was cleaning a conference room when security entered. 4 officers. Serious expressions. No smiles. No small talk. The lead officer approached. "Daniel Mercer?" "Yes." "We need you to come with us." Several employees looked up immediately. Conversation stopped. The familiar sting of public scrutiny returned. Daniel followed without resistance. He already suspected what this was. The conference room waiting for him contained human resources representatives, legal counsel, and 2 executive administrators. Sarah Whitaker was not present. Neither was Victoria Hale. A woman from legal slid a document across the table. "You're being terminated effective immediately." Daniel read the page calmly. Allegations. Confidential information breaches. Unauthorized access. Policy violations. The accusations were absurd and expertly constructed. Every claim was difficult to disprove. Every detail designed to damage credibility. Daniel looked up. "Who authorized this?" The answer came immediately. "The executive office." Of course. The decision had already been made. Truth was becoming inconvenient. Therefore, truth needed to disappear. The meeting lasted less than 10 minutes. His badge was confiscated. His access revoked. His employment ended. Just like that. 7 years erased by a signature. The story spread through headquarters before lunchtime. Rumors multiplied instantly. Some employees believed he had stolen information. Others assumed he was unstable. Many simply stayed silent. Silence was safer. It usually was. Daniel packed his locker alone. Inside sat a photograph of Emma. A spare work shirt. A worn notebook. Nothing more. He closed the locker carefully. Then walked away. No speech. No argument. No bitterness. Yet each step felt heavier than the last. Outside, rain had begun falling again. Cold droplets struck the pavement. Traffic hissed along wet streets. The city continued moving. Indifferent. Unconcerned. Daniel sat inside his aging pickup truck for nearly 20 minutes without starting the engine. The weight settled onto him completely. Not just the firing. The memories. The past. The old wounds. The reason he had disappeared. At last, there was no point hiding from it anymore. Years earlier, Daniel Mercer had been one of the country's most respected forensic investigators. Corporations hired him when billions of dollars were at stake. Regulators trusted him. Boards listened when he spoke. Then came a fraud investigation involving powerful executives. Daniel uncovered the truth. He exposed everything. The consequences followed immediately. Careers collapsed. Fortunes disappeared. Enemies multiplied. His reputation became a target. Then, during the chaos, his wife became seriously ill. By the time the corporate war ended, she was gone. The victory felt meaningless. The truth had survived. His family had not. Afterward, Daniel walked away from everything. The titles. The prestige. The endless battles. All of it. He chose Emma. He chose peace. Or at least he tried. That evening another blow arrived. Sarah Whitaker called. Her voice sounded strained. They searched my office. Daniel closed his eyes. Why? Because I helped you. Silence. Then she continued. They've frozen internal reviews. His stomach tightened. The evidence? Gone. The words landed like stones. Daniel stared through the rain-covered windshield. Gone. Years of manipulation. Hidden. Protected. Buried again. Sarah's voice softened. I'm sorry. Daniel didn't answer immediately. For the first time since this began, genuine hopelessness appeared. Maybe Victoria would win. Maybe the truth would disappear. Maybe powerful people always protected themselves. Eventually the call ended. Darkness settled outside. Inside the truck, Daniel sat alone. Defeated. Not dramatic defeat. Not cinematic defeat. The quiet kind. The kind that arrives when every door closes. The kind that convinces a man he should have stayed invisible. He drove home. Emma was already asleep. Her school project remained on the kitchen table. A handwritten sentence caught his eye. Character is what you do when nobody is watching. Daniel stared at those words for a long time. Then he sat down beside the table. Exhausted. Uncertain. Alone. Near midnight his phone vibrated. One new message. Unknown number. No greeting. No explanation. Just a single sentence. I know who you used to be, Daniel. And I know Victoria Hale is afraid of you. His pulse quickened. Another message arrived seconds later. Meet me tomorrow morning. Bring the spreadsheet. Then a final message appeared. The name at the bottom stopped his breath. Because it belonged to someone from the life he had buried. Someone who should never have known he was here. Someone who knew every secret he carried. And someone who might be the last chance the truth had left. The morning air carried the sharp scent of rain-soaked pavement as Daniel Mercer stepped into a nearly empty train station cafe on the edge of downtown. Steam drifted from espresso machines. Ceramic cups clicked softly against saucers. Outside, commuters hurried beneath gray skies without noticing the quiet meeting unfolding near the back corner of the room. Daniel spotted the man immediately. Age had added silver to his hair. But not enough to hide who he was. Michael Reeves. Former federal financial investigator. Former colleague. Former friend. One of the few people who had stood beside Daniel during the worst period of his life. For several seconds neither man spoke. Years of history occupied the silence. Then Michael extended his hand. Daniel accepted it. You disappeared well, Michael said. Daniel managed a faint smile. That was the idea. Michael's expression darkened. Not anymore. He slid a thick folder across the table. The weight of it was unmistakable. Evidence. Real evidence. Not rumors. Not suspicions. Proof. Daniel opened it slowly. Internal communications. Approval chains. Archived financial records. Executive authorizations. The deeper he looked, the clearer the picture became. His pulse remained calm. But inside something shifted. Because the truth was finally visible. And the truth pointed directly toward Victoria Hale. Not as an innocent executive surrounded by bad information. Not as an unaware CEO. As an active participant. The room seemed quieter. The years seemed shorter. The old investigator inside Daniel fully awakened. How did you get this? He asked. Michael leaned back. Someone inside finally developed a conscience. Daniel thought of Sarah immediately. Michael nodded. She risked everything. A long silence followed. Then Michael delivered the sentence that changed everything. The board doesn't know. Daniel looked up. What? The reports shown to investors were altered before reaching the board. The implications hit instantly. Board members believed they were receiving accurate information. Victoria had controlled the flow of information, controlled the narrative, controlled the illusion. Until now. Michael slid one final document forward. An emergency board hearing notice. Scheduled for that afternoon. Daniel read the location. Conference room Atlas. The same room. The same room where Victoria had humiliated him. The same room where she had ordered him removed. The same room where the truth would finally return. By 2 o'clock, tension saturated every floor of Hale Dynamics headquarters. Employees whispered in corridors. Executives avoided reporters. Security presence doubled. Something significant was happening. No one knew exactly what. But everyone felt it. Daniel entered through the front doors for the first time since his termination. The polished lobby looked unchanged. The marble still reflected light. The fountains still flowed. The giant company logo still dominated the atrium. Yet the atmosphere felt entirely different. People noticed him now. Heads turned. Conversations paused. The invisible man was invisible no longer. A security officer approached. Then stepped aside. No resistance. No confrontation. Just a silent acknowledgement that circumstances had changed. Daniel rode the elevator upward. The quiet hum filled the cabin. His reflection stared back from mirrored walls. Simple jacket. Worn shoes. No title. No position. No authority. And yet he felt more powerful than he had in years. Because he no longer carried uncertainty. Only facts. Conference room Atlas glowed beneath bright white lighting. The same enormous display screens lined the walls. The same polished table stretched through the center. The same executives occupied familiar seats. And at the head of the table sat Victoria Hale. Perfectly composed. Perfectly confident. At least on the surface. Board members filled the room. Legal counsel occupied one side. Senior leadership occupied the other. Sarah Whitaker sat near the back. Her face revealed exhaustion. But also determination. Daniel entered quietly. Every eye followed him. A few recognized him immediately. Others appeared confused. Victoria's expression hardened. Not fear. Not yet. Annoyance. As though an inconvenience had returned. The board chairman stood. Mr. Mercer. Daniel nodded. Thank you for coming. Victoria interrupted immediately. This is absurd. The chairman ignored her. We'd like to hear what you have to say. Silence settled over the room. Heavy. Anticipatory. Daniel approached the display screen. Years earlier, this environment had been familiar. Now it felt strangely distant. Yet his voice remained steady. Calm. Measured. Precise. He began with numbers. Not accusations. Not emotions. Facts. He showed reporting discrepancies. Timeline inconsistencies. Approval patterns. Hidden liabilities. The room listened. Carefully. Several board members started reviewing documents. Others exchanged concerned looks. Victoria remained silent. But only temporarily. Eventually she stood. This proves nothing. Daniel nodded. You're right. Her expression brightened slightly. Then Daniel continued. By itself. He changed the screen. New documents appeared. Internal emails. Authorization records. Executive approvals. Victoria's confidence weakened. Only slightly. But enough. The room noticed. Daniel continued. Patiently. Methodically. Piece by piece. The structure collapsed. Every explanation produced another contradiction. Every denial uncovered another document. Every defense exposed another inconsistency. The process took nearly an hour. Nobody interrupted. Nobody laughed. Nobody dismissed him. The silence itself became evidence. Finally Sarah stood. Her hands trembled slightly. But her voice did not. I personally verified these records. A board member looked toward her. You understand the implications? Yes. The answer arrived instantly. Another silence followed. Then Michael Reeves entered. The final witness. The final piece. He presented independent verification. Third-party confirmation. Archived records preserved outside company systems. The evidence became overwhelming. Irrefutable. Permanent. The illusion shattered completely. For the second time in this story, the room went silent. But this silence felt different. This silence carried judgment. The kind that arrives when truth finally occupies the center of the room. Victoria looked around, searching for support. None came. Executives avoided eye contact. Board members studied documents. Lawyers wrote notes. The balance of power had shifted. And everyone knew it. The board chairman spoke first. His voice sounded older than before. "We will now enter formal proceedings." Victoria stood abruptly. "You can't be serious." No one answered. The chairman continued. "Effective immediately, your executive authority is suspended pending investigation." The words landed with astonishing force. Years of dominance unraveled in a single sentence. Victoria stared at the room. Disbelief replaced confidence. Then anger. Then something else. Fear. Real fear. For the first time, she understood what had happened. She had lost control. Not because someone attacked her. Because the truth finally reached the people she had hidden it from. Board members voted. Legal counsel acted. Formal investigations began. The process moved quickly. Relentlessly. Professionally. By sunset, Victoria Hale no longer controlled the company she had built. The crowd had mostly dispersed when the chairman approached Daniel. The city glowed orange beyond the windows. Evening light reflected across the glass skyline. "You've given this company a chance to survive." Daniel remained quiet. The chairman offered a folder. Inside was an employment proposal. Executive Ethics Director. A position created specifically for him. A substantial salary. Authority. Influence. Respect. Daniel considered it carefully. Then smiled. Not because of the money. Not because of the title. Because for the first time in years he had a choice. A real one. 3 weeks later, Daniel sat in a school auditorium watching Emma receive an academic award. Parents applauded. Teachers smiled. Children laughed. The room smelled faintly of paper programs and polished wood. Normal life. Beautiful life. The kind worth protecting. Emma spotted him immediately. And waved. Daniel waved back. This time there were no investigations waiting. No secrets chasing him. No shadows demanding attention. Only peace. The hard-earned kind. The kind built through sacrifice. The kind that cannot be purchased. As applause echoed through the auditorium, Daniel thought briefly about the strange path that had led him there. A janitor. A father. An investigator. A man underestimated by nearly everyone who met him. And yet none of those labels fully explained who he was. Perhaps they never could. Because the most important truths about a person are often invisible until circumstances force them into the light. And that is why some of the strongest men in the world can walk unnoticed through crowded rooms, for dignity does not come from status, and a father's worth is never measured by the title stitched onto his uniform, but by the quiet integrity he carries when no one is watching.